The moment Eleanor Benson stood trembling at the bank counter, clutching a faded envelope containing her late husband's military pension documents, the indifference she received cut deeper than any delay. The teller, a young man with disengaged eyes, barely looked at her before offering a cold response and a dismissive gesture. Behind her, James Kavanaugh, a former soldier turned HVAC technician, watched silently, jaw clenched tight. The expression on Eleanor's face mirrored one he had seen long ago on his own mother's after his father died in combat. That same quiet hurt, that same undeserved disregard. Something inside James cracked. As he stepped forward, he couldn't have known that his small gesture of support would start a chain reaction that would soon echo all the way up the chain of command. James had only been out of uniform for 6 months. Since returning to civilian life in the modest town of Fairhope, Virginia, he had traded medals for pipe wrenches, discipline for routine, and command for silence. His life was now humble. No flag on the porch, no stories told at the bar. Just a man trying to make ends meet and forget the parts of war that never really let go. Still, his instincts had not dulled. Raised by a woman who had to battle bureaucracy after her husband died overseas, James had seen what it meant to be invisible in your grief. That memory had left its mark, a deep commitment to never be silent in the face of injustice. That day, he had stopped by First Union Bank to deposit a small check. The line crept along as it always did, the scent of burnt coffee and dust lingering in the air. James was tapping his foot when he heard a soft, cracking voice laced with polite frustration. "I was told my husband's pension would be deposited 3 days ago," Eleanor said, her voice barely above a whisper. She was small, with tired eyes and silver hair tucked beneath a wool hat. Her coat looked worn, her folder overhandled. The name stitched in her handbag read E. Benson. "Ma'am, if the system says the funds are on hold, there's nothing I can do," the teller replied flatly. "You'll need to contact the Veterans Office." "Next, please." Eleanor blinked in disbelief. "But I called them already. They said the deposit was processed. I depend on that money." The teller didn't look up. "Saw the... That's all I can tell you." James felt something twist inside him. That dismissive tone, that bureaucratic one knew it too well. He stepped out of line and walked toward Eleanor. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned, eyes wide but grateful. "My name is Eleanor Benson. My husband was Lt. Colonel Edward Benson. He passed last year. This has never happened before." James turned toward the teller. "And your response is to shrug at her and wave her away?" "Sir, this doesn't concern you," the teller snapped. James stood straighter. "It concerns anyone who believes our veterans and their families deserve basic decency." Whispers rippled through the line. Customers began to watch. An older man gave James a quiet nod of approval. "She deserves an explanation, not a dismissal," James continued. The teller scowled, retreating from the counter to speak to a manager, who then glanced toward Eleanor with annoyance. A supervisor approached. "Sir, you're causing a disturbance. Please step back or leave." James didn't move. What's disturbing is the way this widow is being treated. Her husband served this country. She shouldn't be treated like a problem. The room stilled. Eleanor looked down, eyes shimmering. James positioned himself beside her like a sentry. At that moment, the glass doors opened. A man in full uniform entered, posture impeccable. 4 stars on his collar. General Raymond Sinclair. His mere presence altered the air. Silence fell across the lobby. He scanned the room, eyes falling on James, then on Eleanor. Something in his expression softened. "Eleanor," he said gently, walking toward her. "I came as soon as I heard." She looked up in disbelief. "General Sinclair? I didn't think you'd. You should never have had to deal with this alone." James stepped aside, still stunned. The general turned. "And you are?" "James Kavanaugh, sir. Former infantry. Just trying to make sure she got the respect she deserves." The general offered his hand. "You did more than that. You reminded this room what respect looks like." Eleanor's voice broke. "They said the pension was delayed due to a system flag." I tried everyone. No one answered. General Sinclair turned to the branch manager, who had now appeared. Tell me exactly what happened. The manager fumbled. There was a flag, probably from a VA system. We followed protocol. Protocol is not an excuse for apathy, the general said. Eleanor is the widow of LT, Colonel Benson, who served under me for 20 years. If she says there's a problem, you listen and act. A young associate rushed to a computer. Sir, the hold is cleared. The funds will process today. Good, Sinclair said. She should never have walked into a place like this and felt invisible. James remained quiet, letting the moment settle. Inside, he felt something twist, pride, but also sadness that it had taken so much weight to get one woman her due. Sinclair turned to James again. You served? Yes, sir. Discharged 6 months ago. You still carry that sense of duty. James gave a small nod. My mother was a widow, too. She fought through red tape alone. The general nodded. Then maybe your new mission is just starting. Outside, Eleanor sat on a bench, still stunned. The general and James stood by her. The wind tugged at her scarf. Thank you, she said, voice steadier now. I came in just hoping to be heard. I never expected this. James knelt beside her. You reminded me of my mom. She faced the same treatment. You don't forget it, not the words, but the silence. The way people look past you. The general watched, quiet but thoughtful. You're a technician now? Yes, sir. HVAC. Trying to keep the lights on. The general took out a card. I run a liaison office downtown. We support veterans, widows, families slipping through the cracks. We need people like you. People who haven't forgotten. James studied the card. You want me to work with you? I want you to help build bridges between people like Eleanor and the institutions that should serve them. Just then, the bank manager returned. He held a thick envelope. I owe you both an apology, he said, voice low. We reviewed the account. Not just the pension, but overcharges and errors for the last 3 years. This refund is owed. 3 years, Eleanor whispered. James stood quietly, watching the discomfort spread across the employees' faces. We were wrong, the manager added. It shouldn't take confrontation to do the right thing. But maybe it takes someone reminding you what right looks like, General Sinclair replied. Let's make sure that doesn't require conflict next time. We want your help, the manager said. Both of you. Help us train our staff, review our policies. Eleanor looked at James. Her smile returned, not from relief, but from hope. 2 weeks later, James wore a suit for the first time in years. In a conference room at the bank's headquarters, he sat beside Eleanor, who wore her husband's insignia on her blazer. At the front stood General Sinclair. 2 weeks ago, we failed someone who had already sacrificed, Sinclair began. If not for Mr. Kavanaugh, we might never have known. James cleared his throat. This isn't about one person. It's a culture. Veterans, widows, families they shouldn't have to plead for basic respect. Silence followed, heavy and thoughtful. Eleanor added, you can't train people to care, but you can show them what dignity looks like. My husband's life mattered. So did mine. The bank committed to a full veteran support training initiative. Eleanor joined the outreach team. James accepted a seat on the advisory board. The bank created a fund for veteran families facing housing or pension issues. 3 months later, James stood before a crowd at a community center, surrounded by veterans, families, and bank officials. My mother raised me after my father died in uniform, he said. When I saw Eleanor being dismissed, it felt like I was watching her all over again. Tired, proud, and ignored. Eleanor, sitting in the front row, smiled through her tears. Branches across the state began adopting new training programs. Veteran liaison roles were established. Policies changed, but the real shift was in the people tellers who now stood to greet visitors, managers who thanked veterans aloud. Back on stage, James ended with a quiet conviction. Respect doesn't take effort. It takes intention. Listen. Stunt. Speak. That's where change begins. Applause rose, steady and heartfelt. Among the audience, a young soldier in uniform saluted. Later, beneath a canopy of stars, Eleanor approached James. You gave me more than help. You gave me back a voice." James smiled. "You reminded me of what matters." General Sinclair would later say that James had done more for veterans in one act than many organizations had in years. But James didn't seek recognition. He showed up, listened, and stood tall. And sometimes that's all it takes to spark a movement.